In the heart of rural America, hidden among the rolling fields and dense woodlands, lies the small town of Millfield. It's the kind of place where time seems to slow down, where everyone knows each other by name, and where life follows a simple, unhurried rhythm. Millfield was home to fewer than 2,000 people, a close-knit community made up mostly of farmers, teachers, and shopkeepers. The town's charm lay in its quiet streets, its weathered barns, and the warmth of neighbors who looked out for one another. The year was 1962, a pivotal time in American history. The nation was experiencing rapid social change. Movements for civil rights were gaining strength. The Cold War instilled a constant sense of tension, and new cultural ideas began to challenge old traditions. Yet, Millfield remained untouched by much of this turmoil. The townsfolk clung to their conservative values, wary of outsiders and suspicious of anything unfamiliar. To them, Millfield was a sanctuary where life's complexities were pared down to simple truths. At the center of this peaceful town lived Sarah Mitchell, a 27-year-old schoolteacher who had spent her entire life in Millfield. Sarah was known for her gentle nature and unwavering commitment to her students. She taught with patience and kindness, inspiring a generation of children to dream beyond their small town. To many, she represented hope and goodness, a beacon of light in a world that often felt dark and uncertain. Sarah lived alone in a small cottage on the edge of town, surrounded by towering trees and whispering woods. Despite her quiet demeanor, there was a resilience within her that few saw but everyone respected. The days before the tragedy passed without incident, or so it seemed. Sarah followed her usual routine, teaching in the mornings, helping at the community center in the afternoons, and attending church on Sundays. She was a familiar sight at the bakery, always ordering fresh bread with a shy smile. Yet, beneath this routine, subtle shifts began to ripple through Millfield. Whispers floated in the air, faint and hesitant. Some said Sarah had been seen talking to strangers. Others hinted at secret meetings, but no one spoke openly. It was as if the town collectively held its breath, sensing that something was about to change. Then, one chilly October morning, the fragile peace was shattered. Bill Harding, a local farmer, was out walking his dog near the old mill at the edge of town. The early morning fog clung low to the ground, casting a ghostly pall over the landscape. As Bill's dog tugged him towards the creek, he stumbled upon a sight that would haunt Millfield forever. Sarah Mitchell's lifeless body, lying among the fallen leaves and wild grass. At first, it looked as though she was merely asleep, but the cruel truth soon revealed itself. Sarah had been murdered. The news spread like wildfire, igniting shock and fear throughout the community. Millfield, once a place of safety and trust, was suddenly gripped by suspicion and unease. Sheriff Tom Reynolds, a man respected for his fairness and dedication, took charge of the investigation. However, the tools available to law enforcement in 1962 were limited. There were no DNA tests, no security cameras, and no modern forensic technology. Only witness testimonies, careful observation, and old-fashioned detective work. The case quickly proved to be a baffling puzzle, with few clues and many unanswered questions. Rumors began to circulate, as they often do in small towns when tragedy strikes. Some whispered that Sarah had been involved in a secret romance. Others suggested jealousy or hidden grudges. Suspicion fell on several individuals. Sarah's ex-boyfriend, who had recently returned after years away, a mysterious stranger seen passing through Millfield, and a colleague at the school who had a reputation for being difficult. Yet none of these leads yielded concrete answers. Despite relentless efforts, the investigation stalled. The case went cold, and the townsfolk grew silent, unwilling to relive the pain. Sarah Mitchell's murder became a forgotten chapter in Millfield's history, a ghost story told only in whispers and late-night conversations. But even decades later, the questions remain. Who killed Sarah Mitchell? Why was justice never served? And what secrets does Millfield still hide behind its serene facade? The morning Bill Harding found Sarah Mitchell's body was cloaked in a heavy fog that seemed to mute the usual sounds of Millfield. The thick mist curled around the trees and drifted across the fields, giving the town an eerie, almost otherworldly feeling. Bill, a lifelong resident and farmer, was walking his faithful dog along a familiar path near the old mill, a spot few townsfolk visited, especially after dusk. It was there, hidden among the tall grass and fallen autumn leaves, that Bill stumbled upon a scene that would forever change the town's history. Sarah lay motionless by the creek, her body partially obscured by brush. At first, Bill thought she was asleep or perhaps resting, but the coldness of her skin and the unnatural stillness told a different story. Horror replaced disbelief as he realized she had been violently taken from this world. He quickly called the sheriff, and within minutes, the once quiet morning buzzed with activity as law enforcement and curious neighbors gathered around the crime scene. The sheriff and his deputies worked carefully to preserve what little evidence was visible. The creek's water was dark and still, reflecting the overcast sky, while nearby bushes bore signs of a struggle: broken branches, disturbed earth, and faint traces of blood. Yet no weapon was found. The investigators combed the area meticulously, hoping to find a clue that would unlock the mystery, but the crime scene held its secrets tightly. Inside Millfield, the news spread with alarming speed. Mothers hurried to bring their children inside. Shopkeepers closed their stores early, and an atmosphere of fear gripped the town. Millfield's peaceful streets, once filled with laughter and routine chatter, grew quiet and tense. Sarah Mitchell, the kind and gentle teacher, had become a victim of a brutal crime, and no one knew why or who was responsible. Sheriff Tom Reynolds, a man known for his calm demeanor and sharp mind, took personal charge of the case. He organized search parties, questioned neighbors, and coordinated with the county police. But the investigation was hampered by the limited resources of the time. Without modern forensic tools, the sheriff relied on eyewitness testimonies and the painstaking collection of physical evidence. As the days went by, no witnesses came forward with new information. Those who had seen Sarah in her final hours could only recall fragments: her walking home from school, stopping briefly at the bakery, or speaking quietly with someone unknown. The lack of clear answers fueled speculation, and the town's collective anxiety deepened. The funeral was a somber affair. Nearly every resident of Millfield attended, filling the small church with mourners dressed in black. The pastor's words echoed a community's heartbreak, while Sarah's family sat silently, their faces etched with grief and disbelief. In those moments, the town seemed united by sorrow, but beneath the surface, fear and suspicion began to fester. Behind closed doors, whispers circulated. Who could have done this to Sarah? Was it a crime of passion, a random act of violence, or something more sinister? People looked at their neighbors differently, and old friendships were tested. The murder shattered Millfield's illusion of safety and forever altered the lives of everyone who called it home. Sheriff Tom Reynolds knew that solving Sarah Mitchell's murder would be one of the toughest challenges of his career. Millfield was a quiet town where crime was almost unheard of, and the shock had left many residents too afraid or reluctant to speak openly. With no witnesses coming forward and limited forensic technology available in 1962, the investigation quickly became a frustrating puzzle. The first person the sheriff focused on was Sarah's ex-boyfriend, John Harper. John had left Millfield years earlier but had recently returned, stirring up rumors and old wounds. He was known for a fiery temper and had a complicated history with Sarah. When questioned, John claimed he had nothing to do with the murder and provided an alibi. He had been working late at a neighboring farm, a statement confirmed by several co-workers. Despite his rocky past with Sarah, there was no direct evidence linking him to the crime. Next, the sheriff turned his attention to a mysterious stranger seen in Millfield just days before Sarah's death. Several townspeople reported spotting a tall, dark-haired man wearing a long coat who seemed out of place in the sleepy town. No one knew his name or where he came from, and he disappeared without a trace shortly after Sarah was killed. Theories swirled that this man might have been involved, but without a name or a lead, he remained an enigma. Attention also fell on Mr. Collins, Sarah's colleague at the school. A quiet and somewhat reclusive man, Collins was rumored to have harbored jealousy towards Sarah. Some claimed they had overheard heated arguments between the two, though the reasons remained unclear. When questioned, Collins denied any involvement and insisted he respected Sarah both professionally and personally. Still, suspicion lingered, fueled more by gossip than facts. As the investigation unfolded, rumors began to grow like wildfire. Some townsfolk whispered that Sarah had discovered a secret she shouldn't have known, something that threatened powerful people in Millfield. Others believed jealousy and betrayal lay at the heart of the crime. But no matter the story, hard evidence remained elusive. Sheriff Reynolds and his deputies worked long hours, examining every lead and following every tip. They searched Sarah's cottage for clues, questioned neighbors repeatedly, and scrutinized every detail from the crime scene. However, the limitations of the era's forensic science made it difficult to uncover definitive answers. Fingerprinting was basic, and there were no tests for DNA or other modern techniques that might have cracked the case wide open. The pressure to solve the crime mounted. The town wanted answers, but the sheriff faced dead ends. As weeks turned into months, the investigation slowed. The excitement faded into resignation, and the collective hope for justice dimmed. The once tight-knit community grew wary of outsiders and suspicious of one another, as trust eroded under the weight of fear. In the end, no arrest was made. The case became one of Millfield's darkest secrets, a mystery locked away in dusty files and whispered conversations. Yet, for those who remembered Sarah, the pain and questions never truly went away. The investigation left behind a trail of uncertainty, shadowed by the possibility that the truth might never be uncovered. The murder of Sarah Mitchell left a deep and lasting scar on the small town of Millfield. What was once a community defined by trust and close relationships now found itself fractured and wary. People began to look at their neighbors with suspicion, unsure of who could have committed such a heinous act. The warmth and openness that had characterized Millfield faded beneath a cloud of fear and uncertainty. Families who once gathered together for celebrations and community events started to withdraw, keeping to themselves and guarding their secrets more closely than ever before. The town's usual lively conversations were replaced by cautious silence. Many residents refused to speak about the murder altogether, unwilling to reopen wounds or draw attention to the painful past. The subject became taboo, a ghost that haunted conversations only when no one else was listening. Rumors continued to swirl beneath the surface, though most remained unspoken in public. Some believed the sheriff's office had mishandled the investigation, accusations of lost evidence, ignored witnesses, and even cover-ups circulated quietly among the townsfolk. Whether these claims held truth or were born out of frustration and grief, they deepened the sense of distrust between the people and the local authorities. Sarah's family was hit hardest by the tragedy. Unable to bear the constant reminders of their loss, they eventually left Millfield, seeking solace far away from the town where their daughter's life was so cruelly taken. Those who had known Sarah personally, friends, students, and colleagues, were left with a lingering sense of injustice and heartbreak. To them, she was more than a victim. She was a symbol of innocence lost. Even within the school where Sarah had taught, the atmosphere changed. Teachers and students alike struggled to reconcile the bright, kind woman they remembered with the brutal reality of her death. The classrooms felt emptier, the hallways quieter, as if the walls themselves mourned the loss. Over time, new teachers replaced her, and new students arrived, but Sarah's absence remained a silent presence. Behind the closed doors of Millfield's homes, people wrestled with their own fears and suspicions. Some clung to the hope that the truth would one day come to light. Others feared that the murder had exposed a darker side of their community, secrets they would rather forget. The incident challenged the town's sense of identity and safety, forcing many to question the people they thought they knew. As the years passed, the murder of Sarah Mitchell became more than just a tragic event. It became a defining moment in Millfield's history. It shaped how the town viewed itself and the world beyond its borders. The community's silence was both a shield and a wound, protecting its fragile peace while keeping the pain alive. Though the town moved forward, the shadow of the crime lingered. Some residents who had been children at the time grew up with the story as a dark legend, a cautionary tale whispered on autumn nights. Others tried to forget entirely, choosing to leave the past buried deep. But for those who truly cared, the mystery of Sarah's death remained unresolved, a haunting question mark that refused to fade. As the months turned into years, the investigation into Sarah Mitchell's murder slowly faded from the headlines and public attention. The initial urgency that gripped Millfield gave way to a weary resignation. With no new evidence or leads, the case was officially classified as cold, a file gathering dust in the sheriff's office, overshadowed by more recent crimes and everyday concerns. The vibrant hope for justice dimmed, replaced by a quiet acceptance that the truth might never come to light. Despite this, Sarah's murder never truly disappeared from the minds of some residents. For a handful of locals, especially those who had known her personally or were close to the investigation, the mystery remained a painful wound that refused to heal. Occasional whispers surfaced about the case, new rumors, forgotten clues, or potential suspects, but these were often dismissed or ignored by the authorities. Without concrete evidence, these fragments of hope were like flickers of light struggling against the encroaching darkness. Decades later, as interest in cold cases and unsolved mysteries experienced a resurgence across the country, a new generation began to take notice of the tragedy that had befallen Millfield. Amateur sleuths, true crime enthusiasts, and investigative journalists pored over the old police files and interviewed aging residents. They sought to piece together the puzzle that had baffled authorities for so long, hoping that modern technology and fresh perspectives might finally uncover what was missed. Advances in forensic science offered a glimmer of possibility. Techniques such as DNA analysis, which were unimaginable in the 1960s, had revolutionized crime solving. Some wondered if preserved evidence from Sarah's case could be tested, potentially identifying the killer or at least narrowing down suspects. However, time had taken its toll. Physical evidence had deteriorated or been misplaced, and many eyewitnesses had passed away or could no longer recall details clearly. Even so, the cold case investigators persevered. They revisited every lead, questioned descendants of original suspects, and searched for overlooked records. The town itself, meanwhile, wrestled with how to confront its haunted past. Some residents welcomed the renewed attention, hoping it might bring closure. Others feared reopening old wounds that had long been sealed. Sarah Mitchell's murder remains one of Millfield's most haunting mysteries, a reminder that even the quietest communities can harbor dark secrets. It serves as a testament to the fragility of justice when evidence is scarce and time is relentless. For many, the story is a cautionary tale of a life stolen too soon and a truth buried beneath years of silence. The legacy of the case lingers not just in police files or faded newspaper clippings, but in the collective memory of a town forever changed. The question of who killed Sarah Mitchell endures, echoing through generations and reminding us all of the cost of forgotten crimes. The story of Sarah Mitchell's murder is more than just a tragic event frozen in time. It is a profound reminder of the shadows that can linger beneath the surface of even the most peaceful communities. Millfield, with its quiet streets and familiar faces, taught us that evil can strike anywhere, and that sometimes justice remains elusive despite the best efforts of those who seek it. Sarah's death, while deeply personal to those who knew her, also symbolizes the countless forgotten victims whose stories fade into obscurity. These are the lives cut short without answers, the families left with aching questions, and the communities forever changed by the void left behind. Remembering Sarah is an act of honoring not only her life but also the countless others who have suffered in silence. Her story urges us to look more closely at the mysteries we tend to overlook, the cases quietly shelved, the voices unheard, the secrets carefully hidden. It highlights the importance of vigilance, compassion, and persistence in the pursuit of truth. Even decades later, the desire for justice burns bright, fueled by the hope that one day the pieces of this long-forgotten puzzle will come together. For the town of Millfield, Sarah Mitchell's murder remains a defining moment. It challenged the very fabric of the community and exposed cracks in the trust they once took for granted. The fear, suspicion, and grief that followed reshaped the town's identity, and served as a somber reminder that peace is fragile and must be protected. As we close this chapter, we are left with more questions than answers. Questions that echo through the streets of Millfield and through the hearts of those who long for closure. Who was responsible for Sarah's death? Why was justice denied? And what lessons can we learn from a tragedy that time almost forgot? Perhaps, with continued attention and renewed hope, one day the truth will emerge from the shadows. Until then, Sarah Mitchell's story stands as a testament to the power of memory and the unyielding human spirit that refuses to let forgotten victims be lost to time.